like to open up the regular village board meeting for the village of Shorewood on August the 13th in the year 2019. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And roll call, please.
Mayor Chapman,
Here.
Dan Anderson,
Here.
Barb Kirkland. Here. Steve Brockman,
Here.
CeCe DeBold,
Here.
Tony Luciano,
Here.
and Dan Warren.
Here. Okay, let the record show there's a quorum. The village business can be accomplished tonight. We'll move on to citizens. Are there any citizens that wish to address the board? Or, okay, just state your name, please.
Sure. Jim Blackburn, I live at 1712 Augusta Lane. And I'm only come here out of total frustration because for 7 months we've been trying to get between the village and ComEd to fix a pole that's been laying on the ground. And all we're getting from Tony Dolney in your office is this, and the same from ComEd. The thing is, Tony Dolney keeps saying, I know somebody at ComEd. Well, she obviously doesn't. It's been 7 months. I spoke to some people I know from ComEd who should know, said the problem here is they're contracted out to change lights in the poles. They're also contracted out for the basic poles, but the fancy poles, they don't touch.
Right.
This is a fancy pole. And this thing was sitting here with the wires exposed for 7 months, laying on the ground. And no matter who I speak to, it's this. Just all I get.
Yeah.
This has been going on for a long time.
Could you help us here?
The new situation with that is that we're going to look into the annexation agreement. Potentially, there are pole. We've been told that that's the problem right now.
That's
So
what I've been told.
that just got brought up at a meeting recently with ComEd. So we're looking into that, and we should have that looked at.
And how soon can I expect something to be done here? This is
We're
nuts.
working with ComEd on that.
Like I said, in January we called, February we called, March we called. It isn't just me, it's all my neighbors are calling too.
This is,
It's-
recently was the first time, I think a week or so ago, that I was brought to my knowledge that that pole was down.
Is that the new light standard that we've put up? Is that what that is?
No, these are Kipling estate poles. These are the poles that are leaning, as an example, and they're also, in this case, this one's down, but there's been a conflict of who's responsible, so we need to get to the bottom of that, and I don't have that answer right now.
Does Augusta fall in that Devonshire section up there?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. That's the problem. They're all ornate lights right there, so it's the village's responsibility. They gotta make sure they're aware of it. Fix them.
Mr. Blackburn, you say that this has been down for how many months?
7 months. January.
Is it just that one pole, or is there,
Just the one pole, but it's
there's only one pole laying on the ground?
solid.
Can we move it? Is it our pole?
We don't know.
Is it our pole?
Apparently, we're not even sure it's our pole, right?
As of a week ago, or so, I was not, for the last, 20 years or so that subdivision's been there, it's been ComEd's pole. So this is just a new situation that came to our attention.
Well, I'm asking if it's our pole, can we move it until they're ready to put it up? Huh?
He doesn't know if it's our
Oh,
pole.
okay.
For the last, since that subdivision's been there, they've been ComEd's responsibility.
All they've done is change the lights out. They have not touched.
When you find out whose pole it is, if it's ours, can we just move it to relieve him?
Yes.
Oh, you mean Edison has changed those bulbs before? Huh.
Somebody owes you a big apology, okay? And that's coming from us, all right?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, are there any other citizens that wish to address the board Mr. Musson.
If he wants it back.
Why don't you? Okay. Get it out under this.
I attended the zoning commission meeting last week and if I compare the recommendations to the board with the recommendations to the board made in January of 2017, they're quite different, which is fine. But also, I think that the point being that the recommendations from 2017 never happened. And they were the same thing. They were the recommendation for the petition to issue the business license, a conditional permit, was subject to the following, and it listed all the things that it was subject to. And that's the way I understand that it's being presented to the village board tonight, with the conditions that the zoning commission discussed in a public hearing last week with myself and my neighbors were here. So, again, I applaud the zoning commission for once again trying to help us out with our issue, and I did, before they voted on this petition, I did ask them, you know, this is your chance to fix something that's been a problem for my neighbors and myself for 2.5 years. So I think they were open to that. However, I had a couple of disappointments in that meeting, and the first one is that there was another petition also being discussed at the public hearing for a sign, and got a lot of discussion, rightfully so, and got a split vote by the board or by the commission. Whereas this that affects the daily lives of those of us who have to deal with this, got a unanimous yes vote for recommending this to the board. So I was a little bit disappointed in that, except that I do believe that if the conditions that are going to be described to you as a part of this petition are followed, I think that it will go some way to help us with our problem. The other issue that I had was that when I asked the commission about what do we do if those conditions are not followed, and you can imagine my reason for asking that is that, you know, the answer from the village last time was nothing was done, none of the conditions were done, all of this, and then now it's too late to do anything about that. So I asked, what are we going to do to enforce these conditions that you're going to hear about? And the only answer I got was call the police. And, you know, we're tired of calling the police. We're tired of having these issues every day. We don't think it's our job to police anybody to cut their grass and to you know, follow the village codes and things like that. So once again, I've made my comments before about conditional use permits. I don't think that's a very good practice by the village. I think that this is probably not the only business that doesn't follow any conditions or all of the conditions that are put forth, and we probably end up with more businesses than this in the city that are not that aren't following things that they receive their business license on. So I'm asking the board, ask the business owners to do the things they need to do. And then there doesn't have to be any conditional issuing of any business permits. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, before we even get to that, on that ordinance, and this has nothing to do whether it's gonna pass or fail, but under successors, any such successor shall benefit from and be obligated to comply, not company.
Okay. We'll talk to staff.
Okay.
Make that change. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, are there any other citizens that wish to address the village board tonight? If not, I'm going to move on to tonight's consent agenda, which consists of approval of the regular meeting minutes of June the 25th. Also, approval of the committee of the whole meeting minutes of June the 25th. Number 3, approval of the regular meeting minutes of July the 9th. And approval of accounts payable in the amount of $789,503.60. Any questions on tonight's consent agenda? Or would a trustee like one removed for further review?
I'll make a motion to approve a consent agenda.
Second.
Diane, roll call, please.
Dan Anderson.
Yes.
Steve Brockman.
Yes.
CeCe DeBold.
Yes.
Barb Kirkland.
Yes.
Tony Luciano.
Yes.
And Dan Warren.
Yes.
Okay, the consent agenda stands as read and is approved. Move on to reports and communications. Any communications for the board, Diane?
Yes, I received a quick note from Carol Wagner, the president of the Chamber of Commerce. And it's just a quick thank you to the Village of Shorewood for helping us put on the fest. The fest was very successful. It started out with Mayor Chapman and our grand marshals, which was the Shorewood Hugs organization, opened up the fest with a ribbon cutting. Special thanks to Chris Dre, Jim Partham, and Gordy McCoy. They helped with grounds. And of course, Chief Klima and Deputy Chief Jason Barton for taking care of our public safety. Let me just see if there's anyone else in here. Our sponsors were Darcy Buick and Darcy Hyundai and Hawk. And the other 3 big sponsors were Greenscape Services, Postnet, and Coldwell Banker, the real estate group. She just wanted to thank everybody for coming, and couldn't have done this without the village, and she's very grateful.
That's nice. And I'd also like to thank the ladies who established Hugs. I don't know if anybody's aware, but those 7 ladies, I think 4 of them came to me years ago, sat in the office, and we talked about that organization and how they were going to get set up, and that they wanted a venue to put on their chocolate ball, which is their major fundraiser for the year. And I told them this right here would be a great venue for that. And so the first chocolate ball was held here at the Village Hall. It was a great success. The following year, it was bigger. The following year after that, it got even bigger, to the point where they finally had to move out of the village hall because their chocolate ball is so huge and grand right now that they had to move to the banquet facilities on Larkin Road at the old Holiday Inn. I don't know. And I don't know if it's still that or not, but at any rate, they're a great bunch of women. They have helped over 870 families since they've been established. And this is getting them help at the house. They've also sent them on trips like the Make-A-Wish Foundation. They're just a really good bunch of women. Now, I'd like to say that they invited me to play bags with them. And I said, okay, and I picked a partner and we all threw bags. And I'd like to admit to everybody that every bag that I threw that day went in the hole. That's all I'll say about that, okay? So I'd like to move on to our order of business tonight. Oh, by the way, I only threw one bag and it did swing. Okay. So, agenda item number 1, consideration for approval of an ordinance granting a conditional use for a recreation social facility at 201 Earl Road in the village of Shorewood, Will County, Illinois. This is up for a first read. Trustee Brockman.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we get started, I want to thank the petitioners the other night for their patience, because they were third on the agenda, and we finally got to their petition after almost 3 hours of discussion with the first 2 petition items. So thank you for sticking with us. But Dynasty Baseball wants to use 201, or a portion of it, 201 Earl for recreation and social facility, as they call it. And we did hold a public hearing that night. One person did get up and speak about over the picture on the map that shows overflow parking, and indicated that there wouldn't be any room there. I actually visited that parking lot today, and I don't think you could get a Volkswagen Bug in there if you had to. It was so jam-packed full of tractor trailers. I don't know where they're coming from, but it is packed. But so after a nice presentation by Dynasty, we had a very short discussion, and it comes here with an 8-0 vote, unanimous vote for approval. And Kelly, I'm sure you have a few points you'd like to make.
Well, I think that you've covered the high points, and so I guess if we wanted to kind of take a look at the property, I'm happy to go through it. The property is located at 201 Earl, and it is the northernmost industrial property on Earl Road. The request is to operate an indoor baseball training facility, and it will be entirely within the building. The zoning is I-2, and that requires a conditional use for approval. You do see that there is residential to the west and then business zoning just north of the property. The tenant space is highlighted here in blue. There will be hitting and pitching tunnels, which are shown here in the dark blue. The orange represents hitting tunnels, and then there's a video room that's highlighted here in purple. There's also a trophy room, office, and storage. The tenant space is intended to provide small group training to improve specific skills for the members, the athletes that belong to Dynasty Baseball. Their proposed hours are Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., and then on the weekends from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. With regard to parking. And I believe part of the reason why there was a comment made is that when the petition originally came in, the lot that's shown here as overflow lot did not have the tractor trailers occupying the entirety of it. And so the landlord, because it all is under common ownership, he had suggested that that could potentially be overflow. But given that the hours of operation for this business do not overlap with the other businesses in these two buildings, they likely will not even need that overflow lot because they have the ability to park. And you can see here between the buildings, there's actually quite a number of spaces. And generally speaking, for this type of facility, the parents would drop off their children for their specific training and then likely come back to pick them up. So in terms of the needs of the parking, it's relatively minimal, but it does meet the parking requirements as required by code. And then, I guess just to reiterate, there was a unanimous recommendation for approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And as Kelly stated in her pamphlet or paper here, there has been 7 or 8 other conditional uses on Earl Road for recreational batting cages or archery and dance studio, so this is not unusual for that area, so.
And we would request a waiving of the second read as well.
If there are no other questions, or,
I have one
Go ahead.
question, and it's not anything against what they're planning on putting in there, because I think it's a good idea. My question is, we're given a conditional use permit for a recreation and social facility. What is the definition, or what are we calling a social facility? I think we could probably refine that to something a little better. I mean, that leaves it wide open to numerous things.
Well, historically, the way that we've interpreted that is for these recreation, it's been mostly the recreational type uses, the indoor batting cages, the indoor archery, dance studio, yoga studio, and that's simply because there is no definition. I would like to revisit that and provide some better definitions, but for now that fits in with how it's been administered in the past, but I would look to perhaps come back to the board at some time with an amendment to refine that a bit.
I mean, is it possible for an amendment to this if we pass it? I mean, I don't, I want to see a more refined definition of what a social facility is.
Well, currently, the conditional use is specific to the recreational and social facility because that is the terminology in the use classifications. We can certainly refine or add a definition within the zoning code.
You said how all these were, that's how they?
Yes.
Okay. Well, again, I have nothing against it, but I'd like to see us come back and get a definition.
Right into the conditional use
Yeah.
permit, it's granted to allow a baseball facility, or however you describe it, as a social, recreational social facility.
Would it be better suited to phrase as recreational facility regarding baseball?
You want a further clarification for
I think that's what he's, to operate an indoor baseball training facility so that it's limited to that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Kind of like, I would suggest maybe if you look at the staff recommendation, something along those lines could be put in the ordinance.
Right, whatever it may be, I just don't want it that broad of a definition.
good enough, Tony? Good enough?
That's fine.
Okay. Okay, then I'll make a motion to approve an ordinance granting a conditional use for a recreation and social facility to operate an indoor baseball training facility at 201 Earl Road, and waive the second read.
Second.
Okay, Diane, roll call, please.
Luciano,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
DeBold,
Yes.
Kirkland. Yes. Anderson.
Yes.
And Brockman.
Yes.
Agenda item number 1 stands approved. Moving on to number 2. Consideration for approval of an ordinance granting variances from Shorewood Village Code, Title 10, with regard to signage at 931 Brook Forest Avenue, Shorewood Bank and Trust in the Village of Shorewood. Trustee Brockman, this is up for a first read.
Thank you again, Mayor. This was before the village board on May 14th, if we all remember, and we had some concerns about the location, so it came back to planning and zoning. We held a public hearing, and other than the petitioner and owner of Caldwell Banker, no one else spoke. And it did come here with a 5-3 vote, and I'll let Kelly get into the particulars about the sign.
Thank you. So, if you'll recall, there originally were 3 variances. The petitioner, based on feedback from the board, went back and made some revisions. Those revisions then prompted the requirement to hold another public hearing because there were additional variances that were required. So now what they're requesting is allow the construction of an off-premise multi-tenant sign. The, as well as, reduce the required 10-foot setback to 3 feet from the north property line, allow the proposed sign to be located within 15 feet of utility lines where 20 feet is required based on the height of the sign, reduce the required 5-foot landscape requirement at the base to 3 feet, and then allow the installation of an electronic message center sign. So, if you'll recall, the sign would be proposed for Lot 4 to the benefit of Lot 5, was how the original request was, and they would construct and then be responsible for maintenance, the owner of Lot 5. If you'll recall, we did speak a little bit about the subdivision had originally intended to have a subdivision sign. That is shown here in the blue, and that's at the northwest corner of Capista and Brook Forest. The subject lot is on the southwest corner, and it is being proposed now on the opposite side of that intersection. There is a landscape easement where that blue box is shown. However, it does not grant authority to install a sign, but the original approval did actually, and in the planning and zoning packet, there is actually an image of what that sign was intended to look like. So the revisions that came back were that the sign was reduced to 20 feet, so that eliminated the height variance. They did add 2 tenant panels to the bottom of the sign. They modified the location, and it'll be 16 feet from Brook Forest property line, and then they're requesting the 3-foot variance from the north property line on Capista. The reason that they did this was to minimize the impact on the existing improvements of the bank property. They also, because of that setback requirement, would need a landscape variance, and then we do have a code requirement that requires multi-tenant signs to be at least as far from utilities as the sign is tall, and so that's where the variance would be required for approximately 15 feet from the overhead utilities, which you can see here in this photo. The PZC decided to, after discussion, decided to recommend eliminating one of staff's proposed conditions because they, part of the discussion revolved around if not all of the tenants in the subdivision would be allowed a tenant panel, then perhaps it doesn't make sense to allow any of them on there. And so what the sort of end result and the conditions that they recommended were to put Crossroads Business Park either on the bottom 2 panels or perhaps at the top of the sign, and then retain the rest of the conditions that were recommended by staff. There is one item in here where the electronic message board would not be subject to, it would be allowed to advertise businesses within the subdivision, which I believe was an error included in the staff memo, so I just wanted to make that clarification. And the recommendation, as the chairman stated, was 5-3 from the PCC.
Okay. Mr. Brockman, your feelings on how P&Z,
I think their only concern was setting precedent of off-premise signs, and to me, that's not a deal breaker. I don't think we'll be overrun by that in the future. or at least I hope not. So I think that was their really only concern for the three that did not vote in favor.
This is a little different because it should have had a sign on the north side back when that, on the north side of Capist, there should have been a allowed or, you know,
Monument?
set aside for that, and it, you know, it didn't happen, so.
Right.
So is part of the conditional use requiring them to label Crossroads Business Park on the sign?
That is one of the conditions that have been recommended, yes.
Has the applicant stated where they would try to install that?
So instead of the bottom two things, they were putting it there.
Okay.
Or somewhere on top. That was the thought.
Okay.
So if there is no other questions or discussion from anybody, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance granting variance from Shorewood Village Code Title 10 with regards to signage at 931 Burke Forest Avenue, Shorewood Bank and Trust in the village of Shorewood, and I'd like to waive the second read.
Second.
Okay. Diane, roll call, please.
Anderson,
Yes.
Brockman,
Yes.
Kirkland,
Yes.
DeBold,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
and Luciano.
Yes.
Number 2 on the agenda stands approved. Okay. Moving on to item number 3, consideration for approval of an ordinance granting a conditional use for an automobile repair facility at 301 Earl Road in the village of Shorewood, Will County, Illinois. This is also up for a first read. Trustee Brockman.
Thank you again, Mayor. I don't know of anything that's brought more consternation to this village in the last 2.5 years than this project. So saying that, we had a very lengthy discussion. We had about at least 3, possibly 4 people that spoke at the public hearing in regards to the amount of distress it's causing on their properties, which go up to the 301 Earl. So, but after a very lengthy discussion, we did, the commissioners did come in here with an 8-0 unanimous vote, but concerned about how we're going to, other than calling the police, how are we going to watch this, you know, make sure they cover all the aspects of, of all the requirements. So Kelly, go ahead and you can narrow it down to what we need to know.
Absolutely. So the request is for a conditional use to operate an automobile repair facility, which would include the repair of tractors or trucks and semi-trailers. There was a previously approved CUP in 2017 for automobile repair, but the use was not legally established. And after 1 year, then that approval lapses, and therefore the conditions that were part of that approval were never required because the use had not been established at that time. That is the reason why the applicant is coming forward, because they do hope to operate their repair facility and do require a conditional use, being that they are located in the I-2 zoning district and a conditional use is required. It is adjacent to residential. The property is, however, occupied by 3 tenants. One is a landscape contractor business, and they are using part of the facility for storage. There is a cartage business that is only storing tractor trailers on the property, and that is a use that is permitted according to the I-2 zoning district by right. Then the third is R&L Ultimate Truck Shop, which is the repair facility that is looking to occupy the remainder of the building and looking for approval of a conditional use. So in terms of the property, it is improved with an approximately 6,400 square foot industrial building, essentially a pole building. There is a paved surface parking lot where there's truck parking in the rear and a gate along the north portion of that is locked after hours. There is a 10-foot tall fence at the rear of the property, kind of 2/3 the way into the property. It is a wood shadow box fence that was constructed in 2018. Here are a couple photographs of the existing facility. Here's the front. There's multiple overhead doors, as you can see. This is a view from the northern entrance looking north. You can see the gate. And then we've got the rear of the property. There is one overhead door and then a single man door. And then here is a photograph of the existing fence that is on the site. In terms of the use, as I described, the landscaping company is occupying the area shaded in blue. And then the remainder of the building will be utilized for auto repair. There are two bays where the work will be commenced, and then the third area is intended to be used for storage. The proposed hours for the truck repair is Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. No work is proposed for Sundays. In terms of parking, there are 13 parking spaces that are provided in front of the building for car parking, but between the uses of the landscape business as well as the truck repair, 22 parking spaces are required. So the area marked here in orange, those are currently striped as both car parking spaces as well as truck parking spaces. Those will have to remain the car parking spaces to ensure that they meet the code requirements, so they will not be able to have truck parking striped spaces there. The tractor trailer parking will primarily be behind the gate in the area shown here in purple. However, I do want to note that that parking is for E&M Trucking, which is the cartage business, and not R&L, the truck repair. I think Trustee Brockman noted the concerns that were raised at the public hearing, noting that there were multiple residents that spoke. The recommendation, well, and I guess I'd like to kind of note that the Planning and Zoning Commission noted that the cartage business is permitted per the zoning code and then not subject to the conditional use, and that was part of the discussion. The conditions that are proposed on the screen are specific to the conditional use to operate an automobile repair facility. And that one of the things that sort of came up with the property owner is that the truck drivers do have to do sort of vehicle checks on their vehicles periodically. And so that may mean that there may be a hood of a truck open so that they can check fluids and things like that. And that in and of itself is not repair. And so the note here about repair work being conducted within the enclosed building, that is something that would not be, the drivers checking their vehicles would not then be considered repair. So I just wanted to make that clarification because there is likely going to be some activity that is associated with a driver preparing the truck that isn't related to the repair business. And so the commission did recommend some additional conditions be put on the property over and above what staff had recommended. And so you see that the majority of, well, all of these are included in the draft ordinance here. And so I'm happy to answer questions about those. Or we've got the property owner here if there's any questions for the property and business owner.
I've got a couple. Who's going to represent the group?
Who wants to go there?
Please, yeah.
Oh, Mayor.
And Chrissy, help out, would you please? All these conditional uses, do you fully understand these conditional uses? Have you gone over them?
Yes.
Gone over them with your attorney or your business agent or whatever?
Yeah.
So, you totally understand this?
Yes.
Okay. You know just as well as we know, and the residents, what they know, is that, you know, people have a right to live and enjoy their homes, okay? Not saying, you know, just like anything, right? First one in, last one out. Well, we were the first ones here, so the rest of you stay out. We don't, you know, that's not the way the system should run, okay? But we also have to be considerate that these people are living in their homes, okay? And most manufacturers who can reach out and touch them, and I'll give you an example. ExxonMobil. They release something into the atmosphere and it goes a long way and it touches a lot of neighbors. They don't want to do that, that's for sure. And they do their best not to do that, but it happens. But when they do it, they also know they've done it, and they come out and they try to make amends to those people. Small business owner, that's no difference. If you impact somebody else in their life and you knowingly do it, I'm going to be asking our police to bring up a hard hammer down on these requirements. Okay? And I know you guys want to run a business, you want to make money, you know, everybody wants to do that, but you just have to be thinking of these people that are trying to sleep.
We understand.
Up and go to work too. And we realize we've got a bad situation there.
Yeah.
That happened in the past. There's a lot of things that we can't go back and undo. Okay, we're working on it, but we have to think of each other. Okay, and that's all I'm asking. I'm asking you to do that.
Okay.
And we will, and I know this board and the staff and our police are going to be watching a lot closer. And, you know, like some of the residents say, they aren't really responsible for policing that. You are. Do we understand each other?
Yes.
Okay. You know, we welcome you to Shorewood. We hope you have a successful future here.
Thank you.
But please, be considerate.
Mayor, if we could get the gentleman's name for the record, it might be helpful.
Isai Morales.
Ruben Morales.
Okay. Diane, did we get it?
You want to spell that, please? Just
ESAI. And then MORALES. And then Ruben.
Ruben, RUBEN.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We
So
had
most of us
two,
here start with an O in the front, you know, and the rest of us are, you know.
we had two main concerns at P&Z was you had trucks starting in the middle of the night. Have they been moved?
The
front of
to
the
the front of
building?
the building.
Have they?
Yeah. Have they been started to move?
Yeah, well, from the last week, we do not have appointments early morning, but when we have appointments in early morning, that's when we want to start to put in the trucks and the front.
So they
But
haven't had to be moved.
Sometimes sometimes
date,
we
so,
could
okay.
fit 2 to 3 trucks. But I wanna ask, what happened is we got 4 trucks that needs to leave in the morning. I had to put 1 truck in the back because do not fit more than 3 trucks in the front.
And the second question was the door on the
Oh, yeah.
back of the building. Has that been closed when you were repairing semis in that stall?
Yeah. Whenever there's work being done, it's been
It
all
has
done
been.
and closed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So back to your question.
Yeah,
Is there,
we gotta get back to it.
how often do you think you have the 4 that would happen? That you would use 4 vehicles, you need the 4 vehicles.
Let me tell you something. Cottage business is like you have maybe appointments in Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, might either make a pickup or either make a delivery. And when you got appointments, you do not decide the appointments. When you call and make the appointment for either delivery or pickup, they give the appointment. It could be 8 in the morning, could be 6 in the morning, like Indiana, 4 hours from here. So, or Wisconsin, same thing like Green Bay, 4 or 5 hours from here. So we had to the driver needs to leave ahead of time, like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning to get on.
Well, I understand, I understand. I mean, technically, we can't, this isn't part of anything I guess I'm just asking for common neighbor courtesy to try to move these, because it's part of the cartage business, so therefore we really can't regulate so we're just asking to try to do everything possible to have those vehicles in the front when you know they're going to be moved.
Yeah.
So they're not starting up at 2 or 4 in the morning.
Yeah. Well,
That's what we're asking.
Yeah.
They're going to
Whenever-
store them in the front? Are you storing those in the front then?
Okay.
Yeah, the ones that leave overnight are brought up to
The day before, or the night before you close,
They're brought up
you'll
to-
move the trucks you know they're going to be used
Yes.
in the morning to the front?
Yes.
To be, where they're going to, will they be loaded or do you load them?
Depends if it's a if it's empty, then they're doing a pickup, then it'll be empty. But if it's a delivery, then it'll already be loaded. It won't need.
Or that has nothing to do
Oh,
with
no, yeah,
the
we don't
repair.
load. We
No,
don't load
this-
them.
No, this has nothing to
we
do
don't
with the
have a-
repair.
No, I
This is
know,
just
yeah.
discussion we had.
I'm just trying
It's
to understand
cartage,
what
like
you're
she
saying.
said, that we really don't have any say over it. They can do what they want. We're just, in planning and zoning, we kind of reiterated the fact that try to be a good neighbor and move these in the morning or the night before if you know they're going to be leaving at 2 or 4 in the morning.
Right, we don't have a dock, we don't have a fork.
No, I have other questions on what the repair part about it is. And many of the things here that are listed, half of them have nothing to do with the repair shop. It's work that you have to have done in the building, triple basin and stuff like that. Do we have any way of knowing, or is there a limit on when he has to have all this stuff done? Normally, this work needs a permit to get done, and it's a time limit to get done. So are we just carte blanche on this, that it's going to be whenever they get around to it, or are we going to put a time limit?
She's got something.
I have a response. So they will not get occupancy of the space to be able to operate the truck repair unless these conditions are met. So in terms of timing, if they do not meet the conditions, they will not get occupancy and they will not get a license to operate the truck repair. And if it's a year from, if the approval is granted tonight, a year from now, if they haven't met these conditions, then they will not be able to operate. So there is a timeline on the conditional use approval, but there's not necessarily a timeline on the conditions, because the sooner they meet the conditions, then the sooner they would be able to get occupancy.
So they're not going to be
and a
able to
license.
operate
Correct.
the car repair, the truck repair?
Yes.
Until they do that. So the trucks they're using for cartage, which are their trucks, cannot be repaired on the property?
So I think that may be part of the confusion.
Well, the reason I'm asking that, because I know it has nothing to do with the cartridge part, but it has to do with the repair, because they repair their own trucks.
Correct. So the repair component is not allowed to be done until after the conditional use conditions have been met and they've received their business license and their occupancy.
So they cannot work on their own trucks on that property?
Well, correct. So to be clear, R&L Ultimate Truck Shop is a separate business than E&M Trucking. They are separate businesses.
So there's no excuse that our truck broke down, we have to fix it?
They're not permitted to do the truck repair.
I just have one more question, and the only reason I'm asking this is because we've gone through this once before, and we've ended up here with this gentleman coming in several times complaining about it. How are these going to be enforced? Is the police enforcing this, or is the code enforcement enforcing these things? And how is it going to be enforced? That's my only question. I know in the past you've had gone round and round trying to enforce it. Does this conditions here give you enough to enforce that if they're working past the hours or before the hours? And what consequences does it bring to them other than just maybe a warning?
So traditionally, what happens with these locations where there's conditional uses or there's been agreements like at Home Depot or other locations, if there's a complaint by Mr. Musson or any of the other residents, officers will go, they will verify the complaint one way or another. They'll say whether they could hear it, see it, whatever it is, or if it's gone when they get there or whatever. They could write a report, but oftentimes what we do is we put computer-aided dispatch notes into the call. And then particularly when there's a repetitive problem like there has been with 301 Earl, 207 Earl, 205 Earl, and everything else, they send me an email each and every time. And then I forward that to all the department heads usually, but it goes to John and Kelly. They are the ones that verify that, because particularly with all of the conditional uses, those are better enforced by them. It's not something we can take to court and all the other things. It's a violation of licensing, it's not a violation of an ordinance or a statute. So that's why we've done it that way, and it's worked very well at all the other locations. So we've done that here with 207 Earl, and 301 Earl and 205 Earl. We'll continue to do that.
So what you basically saying, I just want to be assured that if they don't comply to these conditions, that there's some enforcement and there's some consequences to it.
There will be consequences. We will be documenting it. They will take the appropriate action relative to the new conditional use rules.
Thank you.
And I guess if I could just add on to that. So we will do periodic inspections, and I have been doing those at 301 Earl since we became aware of the issue. And so unfortunately, some of these issues that are coming up, particularly with some of the after hours, things like that, we may not catch. And so that's where the complaints, when they come in and the PD goes out and investigates and documents that is helpful to us, and that's why they share that with us. But the other thing that was noted at the PZC was that the commissioners also kind of take it upon themselves to help and kind of enforce the conditional use, because they're involved in that process. And so I know that there's been a couple instances where commissioners have identified to us, hey, this is still an issue, can you go and check this out? And we'll go and we'll investigate, and then we'll have them correct the issue. In the event that there is a violation of these conditions, then there is the potential to I don't know the proper legal term, revoke the conditional use, should that be something that, be necessary. But that's something that is an option.
Okay, so there is consequences, and they do understand if they don't meet those, even though you get started, that the conditional use could be removed or revoked, and you're back where you started. Do you understand that? Mm-hmm. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right, so here's my questions regarding the build-out. If we're gonna, excuse me, if this property is going to occupy potentially 3 different occupancies, do they need to have build-outs of each of these bays? And then does the address need to be subdivided down?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Secondly, we're referencing all these different fire code statutes that they're gonna have to bring this property up to. Doing a repair business, we're going to put automobiles, excuse me, we're going to put automobiles into a building. You are changing the fire load content. Is that going to dictate that they need a sprinkler at this facility?
We have had the fire marshal go through the property, and these are the requirements that they have identified. They did not identify a need for a fire sprinkler system, but these are the requirements that they have identified to us, which is why they are included as conditions.
Yeah, that's all I have. Excuse me, thank you.
Are there any more questions for the petitioners?
No, but I just 4, 6, and 8 are the big ones there, and 5 kinda, and especially that triple basin. That's going to be a big project. Get that up and or installed, and when they call and say it's done, we'll inspect it and give the okay for everything, right? That's-
Right, so there will be permits required for these, and so we'll be working with the applicants. We've already provided them a list of contractors that are registered within the village, so they can start getting quotes and estimates. We did identify these requirements to them, particularly relating to the fire and the building code requirements, or the plumbing code, a number of weeks ago, to make sure that they were aware that these would be conditions, and that they should probably start getting some estimates so that they understand how much that's going to cost.
So when it's permitted and done, we're gonna check it and then give them the okay after it's all good. and-
That's
All right,
correct.
good, all right.
Can we get clarification of the no outdoor storage? I just don't want to see these folks parking trailers and that all of a sudden be deemed outside storage. Is that specified that that's the permissible to be stored there? It's just outdoor storage seems awfully vague.
So there was a little bit of discussion, this was an added condition by the PZC, and truck or trailer parking is not considered outdoor storage. Now, if the board would like to add some clarification to that, we certainly can do that, but essentially the intention was to not have tires and oil drums and things like that stored outside, to make sure that everything was essentially contained within the building, with the exception of the parking of tractor trailers on the property. And
I would just ask legal if is there a better way of clarifying that, just so we don't have confusion later on down the road?
Sure, I mean, we can add some definition to it.
I'd just like to see that clarified, just so we don't have to come back from any of the neighbors. So it's clarified right now for the occupants, for the residents, for the board. It's clarified that we're permitting the truck tractors and the trailers that's being deemed acceptable.
Right, I mean, you probably want to say in there that the storage of truck trailers in outdoors is permissible so long as they're being worked on. You don't want to get it into a situation where it becomes like a
Drop yard?
A junkyard.
junkyard, yeah. I would add, something like for a reasonable time while maintenance is being.
Sure. I guess just for everybody's sake of clarification, just so it's there.
Well, and if I could also clarify, so the first condition is that repair work shall be conducted within the enclosed building, so.
Yes.
Sure.
Right, and so there should be no repair of vehicles outside. And so the majority of the storage or parking of tractor trailers is related to the cartage business. This was intended, from my recollection with the commission, to limit the storage of tires and engine parts and oil drums and things of that nature that would be an eyesore essentially for storing, keeping them outside.
We mentioned something there about disabled vehicles, so we're not getting to a parts area where they're using parts off of vehicles that don't run.
Well, I think that would fall under just clarifying outdoor storage.
Well, and we actually do have a code requirement against having sort of truck parts and pieces, right? So inoperable vehicles is prohibited, but, I can certainly work with the attorney and we can.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're gonna have inoperable vehicles because they're there to be repaired, so it's possible, but just can't go on forever, right?
Yeah, the time period that you can have it.
Yeah.
I mean, if I bring my truck to
Yeah, I
get
mean, it has to
fixed,
be a reasonable
it can't be there for 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at it probably on a case-by-case basis. Are parts being ordered?
Yeah.
Are they?
Well, if it's a licensed vehicle, that solves the problem of.
Well, that helps too, yeah.
That's all, I'm sorry.
This is only up for a first read, so. We need a couple of weeks to work on it,
Revise.
okay? We're gonna be working on it for a couple of more weeks. Okay? So we'll bring it back up at the next meeting, which is 2 Tuesdays from now.
We have to come back here in
Oh,
2 weeks,
if-
you say?
I would recommend it.
No, yeah, he was just asking, yeah.
I don't hear, that's why I'm here again.
Okay.
Okay.
It's, this gives the board a chance to clarify some of these issues that they've got. Okay,
Okay,
all right?
all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to business item number 4. Consideration for approval of a resolution accepting a plat of easement to the village. 21530 Southwest Frontage Road. This is HSA Corporate Center. Here's Chrissy.
Yes, thank you. So when the original plat of subdivision was approved and recorded, there were easements that were recorded as part of that, but during the construction process, not all of the utilities fell neatly within those easements, and so this plat of easement is to correct those minor deficiencies that were noted. And so we're asking for approval of the plat of easement for the HSA Corporate Center.
Make the motion to approve the plat of easement for 21530 Southwest Frontage Road.
Second.
There are no questions. Diane, roll call, please.
Luciano.
Yes.
Warren.
Yes.
DeBold.
Yes.
Kirkland.
Yes.
Brockman.
Yes.
And Anderson.
Yes.
And number 4 stands approved. Moving on to number 5. Consideration for approval of a resolution establishing criteria for property tax rebate program. Ms. Berthold.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the criteria being established for the property tax rebate program that we will start next month, with checks being issued next March. There is one small change to the language in the resolution relative to how we classify checks that have not been cashed. The previous language left that responsibility to the bank. However, the system we use with the bank, called Positive Pay, puts that burden on the village to upload to the system what's been approved for payment and then to take it out when it's no longer approved. So we're proposing a time frame of 365 days, where if that check hasn't been cashed, it's no longer valid. That, of course, can be amended if the board wishes differently. There's also a few little typos on the literature that will go out to the applicants, then we'll fix those before they get sent to the printer.
And the checks that we've already sent out over the last couple of years that
Yep.
never got cashed, where do they go? Are they going down to Springfield in their lost funds or?
That's correct. Before we put this provision in that those checks become void, they're turned over to unclaimed property, and the residents have the opportunity to seek those funds from the state treasurer's program. So,
Is this going to eliminate that?
yeah, that would negate that. Last year, I think there were 10 that were uncashed, so it's not that many.
Okay. Yeah, it's not that many, yeah. Okay, so that'll
So
solve
those
that
can
problem.
sit down in Springfield for eternity then, or what are they?
Yeah, well, and how it works is we void those checks that were sent to, and it's not just for the property tax rebate program, it's any vendor that we've paid that hasn't cashed their check after a period of time. We void those checks, and then we take that amount and send it to the state with the information of who it's payable to. So then that website that you go into and type in your name, that's where that information comes from.
And then the state gets notified by the person, and then they say, hey, we got money.
Yeah.
Then the state notifies, what, the village?
No, our participation ends when we send that list to the state with a corresponding check.
Oh, okay. Oh, so
So
we send
then
the
it's-
money right to Springfield then?
Right,
okay.
we send the money right away, and then it's always the property of that intended vendor or payor, and they get that money when they request it.
Okay.
It's still better. Is 306, is that like a normal, a year, is that normal for this kind of stuff, or?
It's probably a little longer than average, so.
2 years.
What's that?
2 years, right?
365 days?
I thought you said 600.
Oh, 365.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
I misheard you.
You know, I asked this before, and I know it's not a popular question, but this rebate's been going on for 7 years, and I know you guys made a commitment to the people, but we're coming up with some expenses that are getting quite high. And just looking over the last 7 years of what you rebated, so far, we've given back $2 million. I'm just wondering how, if you intend ever to use this money, maybe towards the water and stuff like that, or if this something that's gonna go on forever?
There's 3 priorities on that resolution, okay? Number 1 was the water. Number 2 is added other infrastructure, and I think 2 is the rebate, and 3 is the added infrastructure. So if we get to a point where we think, we don't even have a solid number on the water for, why would that come up right now?
Well, the
We
only reason I
don't even
brought it
have
up
a
is
number on what the water's gonna cost
we know we're
us.
gonna have a big expense down the line, and I just thought it might be a wise idea to maybe look, maybe not this year, but maybe in the next year, to kind of phase this out. Because eventually, if we're gonna have these expenses, you're looking at water, you're also looking at a public works facility, and maybe a means of collecting money over the next 5 years, we're talking over another $2 million. That's just my thought on it.
Well, and the priorities are there. If we need it for the water, then it's not available for rebate. That's what the resolution said.
I know, but we can change the resolution, can't we, by vote?
I'm just telling you what it
Yeah,
says.
all right.
What
I'm
we're
just,
trying
never
to
mind.
follow here, okay?
Anyway, I stated what I was stating, that's
Good.
all I wanted to point out.
Okay.
Right, this was a promise that
I
was made
understand
at
that.
the time, so.
Yeah. No, I understand that, Dan, and that's
change the
why I
resolution to satisfy
prefaced it the way I did. I
Yeah.
just think that we're facing some things in the future.
I
And if we
understand
can
that, but
utilize
if
this
that's what
money
happens
going
in the
towards
future,
it,
then
it might
that's
be
what we'll deal with.
a good financial,
Right, I agree, but on the same behalf, we don't even have a cost estimate yet.
And that's what the process says, okay? If we need it, we take it away, okay? So.
I'll make the motion of approval of resolution to establish a criteria for the 2018 property tax rebate program.
Second.
Diane, roll call, please.
Anderson.
Yes.
Brockman.
Yes.
Kirkland.
Yes.
DeBold.
Yes.
Warren.
Yes.
And Luciano.
no,
Agenda number 5 stands approved. Moving on to number 6. Consideration for approval of an ordinance adopting an updated personnel manual for the Village of Shorewood, Will County, Illinois. This is up for a first read. Mr. Kulata.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we have a draft of the manual that reflects some of the things we've talked about previously. The edit was made in regards to the telephone. There was an older provision I mentioned at the last meeting in which we pulled out some of that. I do want to call your attention to 2 other points in regards to that, or to edits. But first, let me speak to that section that was recently deleted. If you go to page 59 of the redlined version of the manual, you'll see under telephone, under chapter 5.1, there's some blue text with a line cross out. That is the older language that I referenced and has since been deleted, as you see here. I don't think it's necessary, and I wouldn't want to give the impression that there's a different standard for employees who work at a desk as opposed to those that don't. So that language there is deleted. The other edit that has been made since we last met and discussed this was in regards to just a section of the sick time provisions. If you go to page 30, 34, under D, it's referred to as retirement. So at the bottom of 34 and top of 35, you'll see some blue text that's crossed out. Some of this language is not necessary because it involves actions that were already taken. But there's also some language that was in this section that has since been relocated. So if you turn to page 33, you'll see on page 33, section 4, sick leave. Under A, there's a 1 and a 2, and this is in regards to sick time accrual. So this is language that was underneath retirement D, okay? And it really was not properly placed. It's difficult to locate if you're trying to identify, how is a sick time accrued? You're not going to think to look at the retirement section. So all that's proposed is moving that out of that section and putting it here, as you see in blue, under section 4.5, sick leave. So it's the same language, it's just relocated in the manual. So hopefully it'll be easier to find for employees. So those are the only edits that have been made since we last spoke. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Coletta?
Of course, this is on for first reading. If you'd like, you could waive second reading. It's entirely up to you.
Are we in a hurry for this by any chance, or not really?
I'd like to leave it at a first read.
I agree.
Fine.
Yep.
Well, we'll be happy to bring it back next meeting.
Please.
Very good. Okay, moving on to business item number 7. Consideration for approval of an ordinance of the Village of Shorewood amending the Shorewood Code of Ordinances, Title 1, Chapter 5, Article B, Village Administrator. This is also up for a first read. Mr. Coletta.
Thank you again. This ordinance has not changed since it was originally discussed over a month ago. However, there is one insertion of some language that's been recommended. It's not shown on the draft ordinance, but I'd like to direct your attention to the bottom of page 1 of the ordinance. So you were looking at item B under powers and duties. So the way it reads, currently appoint, promote, and remove all village employees. And the recommendation is to insert except department heads because that is addressed elsewhere in the ordinance. So it's just clarifying so that there's no appearance of conflicting language within the ordinance itself. So what would be inserted is except department heads at the end of B, the bottom of page 1.
Under I, Jim, you have village clerk in there. Cooperate with and advise the village treasurer and village clerk in their performance of their duties. Is that a responsibility for the administrator?
That isn't something that's been changed.
I didn't think it was, but I wanted to clarify.
I think the spirit of it is we all need to work together. So I think that's all, is that it's kind of a group effort. I don't see it as anything other than coordination and
I
cooperation.
just wanted to clarify what was meant by that.
Yeah, that's the original language, hasn't been amended, so that's the way it has been for some time now. So again, this is up for first reading. You can certainly take it up now, or we'll put it on the next agenda.
I'd make a motion to approve it, ordinance amending the Shorewood Code of Ordinance, Title 1, Chapter 5, Article B, Village Administrator, and waive the, to update it and to waive the second read.
As amended, right?
Amended, yeah.
Okay, Diane? Wait a minute.
Who second?
Did you second it?
I did.
Yeah.
Mr. Warren did.
Okay.
Okay.
Luciano?
Yes.
Warren?
Yes.
DeBold?
Yes.
Kirkland?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Brockman?
It. Agenda item number 7 stands approved. We'll move on to reports. Trustee Anderson, Public Works.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First up, manhole smoke testing is to begin August 19th. Letters have been sent out to the residents in the area, and the area is Basin 6, so and that consists basically of Route 52 south to Sile Road and from Garden Terrace east to 55. So it's that older part of the town, and that's Basin 19, or Basin 6. Letters have gone out, and if there's any questions, anybody out there needs to get in touch with anybody, you can call Public Works office at 815-553-2321. So that's going on. Manhole repairs beginning September 2nd, Basin 5. CD's Four Seasons Park is back to normal after the festival. And the Public Works guys have been working on cleaning up the West Shore Drive area along the river. That's where we lost the majority of the houses in the flood some number of years ago, and there's some growth and stuff, brush that's been cleaned up. It's looking a lot better. Street Department's also been doing culvert and reditching projects around the Brookshore area. And the last thing is, if you all remember the River Road lift station generator, we had to buy a new one. That's in and up and running now, so everything's back to normal with that. So that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Brockman, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next meeting will be September 4th, and it's really too early for an agenda at this time. But want to thank publicly Kelly for all the hours she put in on the 3 agenda items we had at our last planning and zoning, and I think we adjourned sometime after 10 o'clock, so we had a lot of discussion. So thank you again for your help that night and for tonight too. That's all my report.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Kirkland, Parks and Recreation.
Thank you. Shorewood Summer Camp ended on August 1st. This year we had a total of 39 kids that participated throughout the summer. Online registration is now open. Visit the website for more details to create your user account. That's something that we kind of been working on, we've been waiting for, so it's rolling. We had beautiful weather and a great turnout for our last party in the park on July 25th. Thanks to everyone who came out to watch movies and listen to bands with us this year, and to all of our sponsors who made it possible. Also, thank you to everyone who came out to the Cardboard Boat Regatta on July 28th. We had 10 boats that were able to make it for the new date. Your boat designs impress us more and more each year. Thank you to Public Works, Troy Fire, and our police department for all your efforts to help make this event happen. The Shorewood Connection, our newly redesigned village newsletter, is at the printer and should be arriving in the coming weeks. The Shorewood Connection will be published quarterly to bring you news about our community events, our community in general, and also programming. Upcoming events, we have September 6th is our family campout. This year's campout will be held at Shorewood Park from the September 6th until the 7th. Pre-registration is required as space is limited. Please contact the Parks and Rec Department for details on how to register. September 7th is our ACE race. On September 7th at 10 a.m., disc golfers come together for one purpose, to throw aces. An ACE race is not a tournament. It is fun for all skill levels. All players are welcome, and each player will receive 2 identical ACE race discs and other cool disc craft gear in their player pack. Be sure to register by August 23rd. You don't want to miss this event. September 13th is our fall movie night. Join us for first ever fall movie night on Friday, the 13th of September at 7 p.m. to watch Goosebumps 2 Haunted Halloween. Bring your blankets, chairs, drinks, food, and anything you need to enjoy an outside movie. September 14th is Touch a Truck. This year's Touch a Truck will be held at Seeney's Four Seasons Park from 10 to 2 with a special early hour from 10 to 11 is special needs pre-party and quiet hour. So the first hour is for special needs. If you're interested in having your vehicle there, please contact the Parks and Rec Department. September 28th is our Oktoberfest. Our annual Oktoberfest will be taking place from 4 to 11:30 p.m. on September 28th. We would like to invite families to come enjoy traditional German food, music, and more from 4 to 8 p.m., after which the venue then becomes 21 and older. The Lounge Puppets will be performing from 9 to 11:30 p.m. And lastly, but certainly not least, I just would like to offer our condolences to the family of Bruce Zeke. He was a longtime Shorewood resident and a longtime village board member, and he passed away over the weekend. And that's all I have.
I'd like to add my condolences, and I'm sure the rest of the board, for Bruce, okay? And the family, so God bless you all. Trustee Luciano, Citizens Advisory.
The Citizens Advisory will be meeting in September, on September 26th. Also, if anyone's interested in getting involved with the committee, you can contact us through the village website. All the members' information is there to contact, or call me. My number is listed on the village website. That's all I have.
Okay. If there's nothing else for the good of the whole, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Diane, roll call.
Kirkland? Yes. Brockman?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Luciano?
Yes.
Warren?
Yes.
And DeBold?
Yes.
Adjourned.